Okay, I'm live here. Now I know with my headphones and the microphone here is a little bit more sensitive than normal. But that's alright. You'll notice a consistency with my uploads of my going live and all that. I don't use all these big distractions and stuff to take you away from what I'm saying. No. Nor do I like to really give you anything more than what I know. Goes to the part of a person can only do what they know. If they don't know something, they can't do it. I don't care how much they want to try and do something. If they don't know, they can't do it. And just because you might have a question or two to come to me, you don't know what's in my head, so don't come to me with your idiotic questions. And I want to be real with you. Yes, I got mental troubles. We all do. I don't know a person in the world that doesn't have some time on thinking differently, mentally thinking differently than everybody else. We all think different. We all process things in our head at a different rate and different way. Why? Because we can only do what we know. If we don't know something, we can't do it. You might try to do it, but you're not going to succeed. I mean, you take a carpenter and put him in an operating room to do brain surgery, what do you think's going to happen? That's right. Same thing. You could take some brain surgeon and put him in a computer lab to do microscopic nanotechnology stuff. He'll come close, but he won't be able to do it. I once saw people where they built these motherboards and chips into computers, and all the chips they drew a little design because they could get that small and go that low to actually do something like that. That's really great. But you try to get a brain surgeon to do the same thing, they may or may not be able to do something like that. You can only do what you know. Which brings me to my point about sgetReal. There is a number for everything in this world that we're living. A number of when it started, and it's like a roller coaster. It's going to build up to a peak, then it's going to start dropping off. And as it drops off, it's liable to drop straight down at a slow curve, whatever. But once it goes down, it will never come back up to the same height that it was. Let's get real. It just doesn't work like that. Which brings me back to numbers. There was a great mail order catalog, Sears and Roebuck. Matter of fact, there was two of them. J.C. Penney's was a great one too. And when you lived in rural America, away from the stores and all like that, and you wanted to order something, you could order from these catalogs and be brought to you, put in the mail and sent to you. There's many homes throughout the East, Northeast, Southeast, and Midwest and all that was built by ordering these homes through that catalog. Here's a robot. Simple design, all the material, everything came to you. All you had to do was put it together. You even got the blueprints on how to do it. But there was a number on the mail order catalog. That only lasted for so long when the department stores opened up. when the malls opened up, it started bringing the end to all these mail order catalogs. At one time, you could even buy a wife through there, mail order wife. I think they made a movie about that one time, and I thought it was so funny. Yeah, order your wife there. But then again, parts of Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, all was settled because they accepted women into their world from another country. And when they did, the women came over with the knowledge they were going to be getting married. They'd never seen the guy or whatever, but they accepted it the way it was. When they got here, they changed everything. I mean, there's lot of beautiful cooking and stuff like that, gumbo and stuff like that. That was made because of these women that came over from a different country. There's a number, and I keep saying that. Now we know that history likes to repeat itself. I call it the sisters. You got Pete, one sister, called Pete and Petra, whatever you want to call her. But she has a sister, Repeat. We seem to do the same thing over and over. Well, what do you think Amazon is? What do you think IKEA is? Are they not just another mail order catalog? Though you do it across the internet, are they not just that? Another catalog? You go to the Amazon site and you look up all these different things, and you can order them and buy these things across the internet. Which brings you back to one of the first ones that you could really buy and still re- not really rely on because they didn't have the best of products. Even though you could establish credit, they called quick instant loan, and that was from Fingerhut. Now, Fingerhut could, for some people, help them establish credit, get going. But Fingerhut, the products that sell no lower than what you might find in a department store, are not made with the best of quality. I remember one chain store, and at one time we called Elmart, and Elmart was bought out by conglomerate Walmart. And one way that Walmart kind of succeeded was they eliminated the storeroom. The store, the way they reordered and stocked their store, was sent to a central hub, and that central hub um, had that product on a truck, sending it back out to Walmart to replenish it. And that was their main thing. They could replenish things at a higher rate than anybody else. But they went on television and they did this thing about rollback prices. That was good for a while. But for a while, there was a little bit of war going on between American products and foreign products. And Walmart came out whenever possible. We will have nothing but American made. Well, this is good and fine and everything for a while. And Walmart grew and got bigger, just like IKEA has grown. Fingerhut grew, just like Amazon has grown. But do you think they're going to last forever? Do you think there will not be another company that comes through that can do things better than Amazon? Then you're forgetting about Pete's sister, Ree, because she would come around and do a repeat, and it'll look just as good and even better than what Amazon has, who are Pete or Petra, whichever way you want to look at it. But there is a number of people. Don't fool yourself. Now, I brought this all up about Amazon. I'm an Amazon Prime member, happy and glad to be there. I order and buy things through Amazon. I don't through IKEA because I believe too much extended credit or looking just isn't that good. The same reason why I don't have eBay or any place else that I buy things from. I want a company that I can rely on. But lately, some of the things coming out of Amazon, and Amazon's not selling it, but they're selling it for other companies. And those companies sometimes are not in America or have American best interests. But it doesn't matter. People are looking to buy cheap and they see stuff and they go ahead and buy that. That's part of the REIT system. Just like Fingerhut does, just like Sears did, just like J.C. Penney's done. It's all part of the repeat. But when you start selling cheap products and you do it at such a fast pace, there's got to be a consequence for it. Remember, the roller coaster's going up, it's going to come down. It's like McDonald's. McDonald's started off so small and grew so fast, become so big. They are worldwide now, all over the world. They know McDonald's, but McDonald's has hit a peak, and even though it seems like they're steadily going in one direction or leveling off, they're not. McDonald's is actually going down. That's why they look to sell different things, because it takes that leveling off and brings them back up. But they can never go back up to the peak that there was. They can come close to it, and that lets them level off and kind of slide back down again. There's a number for everything, and I'm using straight names and everything. Why am I calling all this to your attention? The world has grown at such an astounding rate. The population is so big throughout the world. There's so many different governments, so many different regulations and things. The laws, even in America, differ from one state to another, and these laws are not regulated. And I would give you one, the voting law. No state should have the right to dictate how an individual will vote for a national election, one electing the president, your senators, congressmen, and all like that can be elected through your state election laws. But when it comes to a presidential election, all that should be left up to a national voting right. But yes, the voting law is different. I can go into different ways that this can be implemented. Kind of brings me back to there was a tribes throughout part of the Far East that was electing a new president, somebody to rule over the country, and everybody was encouraged to go vote. But some people didn't have the knowledge to read and write and stuff like that. So to keep it all fair, what they did, they came in and they put the thumbprint down on a piece of paper by what they wanted to be done, who they wanted. And that's all that was on the paper. One was one name, one was another. People came in, just put a thumbprint down. That's how they voted. It was none of this IDs. Anyway, let's get back to the numbers. The numbers is that the world population is set a little bit more Well, I like to say 7 billion, but it's more like 15, 16 billion people in the world. And that number is only going to escalate. I remember back in the 60s, somebody was telling me that over in the eastern countries from here in America, and some of them in the south, that for every square mile that there was something like five, 600 people living, and it may have been greater. I can't remember the precise number, but it was a pretty good number, big number. In America and up in Canada and parts of Mexico, not all of Mexico, but parts of it, people living in a square mile here was something like two, three, maybe five, not 500. There was a big difference. And I always wondered, why should America rule the world? That's because we did have the people here, and we did have the freedom to kind of encourage growth, technology, all this other stuff, rules, regulations, build things at a faster, better rate, and all like this. And I remember at one time, and I'm going to kind of shock you with this. When I started working, I was making 75 cents an hour, and I had to work 50 hours a week. You do the math. 5 times 7 is what? Right. 5 times 5 is what? Add them two together, you got an idea what my paycheck was by the week. It wasn't that much. But yet, on the paycheck that I was living, I was making, I could go rent an apartment somewhere for $10 a month. So with one paycheck, I made more than enough to pay for that apartment. I could go get a car and have it financed and only have to pay about $10, $15 a month to buy that car. And I'm talking about cars that are running about $2,000, $3,000 a piece. That's all they were. But I can afford to do that. Working on 75 cents an hour. Now, you start figuring it all out. Of course, we didn't have to have insurance and everything like that. Just a good driver, just a good driver's license and stuff. But most Americans, by the time they were 16, they could start driving. They didn't need a driver's license anyway. But at 75 cents an hour, the cost of living was equal. Today's life, minimum wage, I think it is something like, in some states, 7.51 an hour. Basically, 75 cents an hour. 7.51 an hour. Government regulated minimum wage, 7.51. That's what everybody makes to begin with. They get raises, little ones here and there. By how many of them at 7.50 an hour can go out and rent an apartment? That's because the population is so great. So the people renting these apartments don't care. They know what they want, they know what they gotta have, and that's what they're gonna charge. And if you don't make enough money, that's not their problem, that's yours. Population explosion. It's all grown up. There is a number for everything. And the number right now is that the cost of living for minimum wage, even if it goes up to $15 an hour, which is equivalent to me going and making $1.50 an hour. The cost of living is at such a rate expands till I couldn't afford to go out and buy a house or buy a car or even have the insurance to drive the car. There just is no way. Let alone think about buying a house, even with HUD and all like that. Most houses run about 150 to 250, $300,000. You get it financed for 25, 30 years, you're still going to be paying thousands of dollars per month just for that house. That doesn't mean property taxes or insurance that you have on it, nor does it mean anything for the upkeep. So even at $15 an hour, you're going to fall short. You're not going to have enough. Not unless you double up, triple, quadruple up. People making $15 an hour, living in the same house, look, working for the same goals, pay for that house. Then you might be able to. But I'm talking about numbers here. There is a number for everything. Soon the gap between the poor and what they can afford is going to be so great. It's going to benefit them not to work because they can get more in barter and trade than they could ever from working for a living. Some of these people, like back in the 1930s, have already lived on the street. I have. Can go back to living on that just as well and dandy as anybody else. Rockefeller one time took traveled the country and he made his blunt statement. At least I think it was Rockefeller. He said the happiest people he ever seen were the poorest. He said he didn't see why they had a reason to celebrate, dance, sing, and laugh and be joyful because they didn't have that much money, and he just couldn't see how they could be like that. But yet they were. The thing is, they was honest and true about it, and they were willing to help anybody else if they could. Unlike the rich people that just walked over everybody, these poor class was willing to do whatever they could to help those around them, which is true. What's bad is that those that middle class is making anywhere from 40, $50,000 a year think that they can get by, that they get good credit, and they can buy all these stuff that they want. But the truth is, soon the gap is going to be so great, even they can't afford to go to work. Even they can't afford to keep a job. That's what's going to happen. Because what I'm talking about, $40,000, $50,000, or I'm talking about your basic nurses, basic teachers, basic custodial workers, head custodial workers, office workers, bankers, and stuff like that, bank tellers and all. They're not going to make enough to make a living. After all, it will build up, and they can't afford to pay anything. So what are they going to do? Well, you see it's happening now. All these people barely couldn't get by before the pandemic, and once in the pandemic, it just escalated. So many people need assistance to get by with just rent. And the only way they're going to make their money is by charging higher rent. If they can't get it from one person, they're going to get it from another. And they'll have to keep going up on the rent. Taxes and everything, paying for all this stuff, it's costing them money. So they need to get it from their renter. So they have to go up, which creates a larger gap. And this isn't happening just in America. this is happening all over the world. Even though government has stepped in, try to regulate all this stuff, it's not doing any good. How many said have heard the saying, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will feed himself every day for the rest of his life. It's true. But then again, if the cost of fishing is more than what somebody's giving them, they can't afford to go fishing no more. So what then? They go back to letting that person give them a fish. Well, he screams, well, this ain't enough. I got more than my mouth to feed. And they say, okay, we'll give you 2 fish, 3 fish, 4 fish, 5 fish. But there's a limit on how much that person can give. And only a limit on how much that person can take before they need to go back to fishing. It's all about the numbers, people. So what is this number I'm talking about? It's called a point of no return. When you reach a level where it is cheaper to stay home and do nothing than it is to go to work, then it's all going to blow up in our face. We saw this during the pandemic. People couldn't go to work, so they draw unemployment. When things started to relax a little bit, what happened? Economists says it's cheaper for those not working to draw unemployment than it was to pay to go to work and work at a lower wage and make the money they need to pay their rent. While unemployment and the benefits they were getting from unemployment was greater than that of going to work. And now they're trying to back it all down, the government is, and it's going to have a backfire effect. Because the moment they start lowering all the benefits that these people were getting, these people then all of a sudden going to need to go back to work. But the employer, even though they might be paying more, are not going to be able to hire as many people back. So the unemployment rate is going to wind up at a certain level. And as these people making this money and all these other people not, the gap is going to grow. These people are not going to be able to pay their rent. They're going to be put out on the street. And when you got a family member get put out on the street for no other reason than they couldn't make enough money, even though they were working, it's going to irate and frustrate others around them. And they're liable to just throw up their hands and say, I give up. I'm not going to work either. If my family member or their family member or my friend-in-law can't work, I can't afford to help them. Nobody can. It's better to just throw my hands up, turn around, and walk out. Give up. Okay, the rich want to charge all this and put me out on the street. We're poor anyway. We've already been down there. We know what it's like. All of a sudden, the unemployment rate, you watch, will jump because there's a number. And it's not just here in America. It's all around the world. It's all around the world. If you don't think so, look at what's happening in the economy throughout the rest of the world. I'm not talking about just China and Russia or Japan or Australia, New Zealand. I'm talking about every place else. Over in India, where they got almost 4 billion people living just in India. The unemployment rate there is astronomical. Even when the people could go back to work, most of them chose not to because of churches, religious sects, and all like that. were feeding them. Sure, they had to live on the streets, but that's all right. They had a place where they could go and live on the streets, be safe, warm, comfortable. They didn't need to go back to work. Sure, they had families here and there, but if they couldn't make enough money to feed themselves, how are they going to make money to feed their family? It's best for the single person, family, and all, just go ahead and live on the streets because there's always some organization willing to feed them. And that's better for them because then they haven't got to do the back breaking labor and they're getting fed. It might not be what they want to eat, but it's something. It might not be where they want to lay their heads, but they're not scared of the next person around them laying with them because they ain't got money either. And they become safety in the number. So they don't care about how many people is lying in the street. Sure, it's going to be cold, wet, and they want to get out of this. But they're not worried about that. Eventually, the government will come in and make something for them, do something for them. After all, the government is throwing them the extra fish that they need to get by. The government is taking care of them by throwing extra fish at them. It's not going to work. It just doesn't. Which brings me back to a little other thing about different places of society throughout the world that had the same type of population explosion happening all over the world. They too felt the trouble and the problem. Hitler, even though what he did was the most tragic and worst thing in the world you could ever do, but he did it because Germany was feeling an explosion of people, unemployment here and there, even though the lesser class would still be able to make a living and all. What Hitler was mad about was that this class of people was taking food out of people that he recognized. This class of people wasn't as good as his class of people. His pride and his prejudice and his hatred spilled over to make the country of Germany do what it did. And all those people that died. And yeah, it was the Jewish Israel people that died. But it was also their supporters and everybody that was trying to keep Germany from doing that. Look at all the soldiers from around the world that went to fight against Germany. All of them died to help free up everybody else in the world. You said it was World War, we were protecting ourselves. Yeah, we were protecting ourselves, but we are also protecting everybody else. The government couldn't do it no more in Germany, and so Hitler did what he did. He came in, created dictatorship. This is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And that's what's happening in different places all around the world. There are dictatorships, and as much as these dictatorships throughout the world think they rule the people underneath them, there is a number. There is a number that they can rule for so long before the number comes to where those underneath them just give up, throw their hands up, say, okay, we can't do it. We can't do all this. Feed us now. Take care of us. Or we'll find food here and there, out in the field, here and there. Kill a bird, kill a rabbit, kill a cow, kill a pig, eat bat, eat spiders, insects, whatever. And that's what they'll do, because they have no other choice. How do you think most Far Eastern people learn to like seaweed? how to learn to harvest the kelp throughout the oceans and stuff like that to eat. How certain algae upon the water is safe and good to eat because people got poor enough till that's what they eat. Reminds me of a story, and this story takes place with the first settlers coming over to America. Now, once the United States become a country, and we were receiving goods from around the world, there were ports that were set up, piers and docks and things like this for the ships come in, making it easy to unload for these ships and reload for the ships. Goods coming in, goods going out. But the workers there that was doing all this work, they wasn't making good money. But they found something that was in the water there, a crustacean, that they found that nobody else wanted to eat, but they eat it. They could take it home, cook it. And some of these crustaceans big as my arm, weighing 5, 6, 7 pounds, even 10 pounds sometimes. And these crustaceans were real good. And the rich people looked down on all these poor people for eating all these crustaceans from the water, thinking that's the worst stuff that anybody could ever eat. Until one guy, a poor guy, decided, well, all these people, they need to eat. And while they're working, nobody's cooking them. Maybe I can cook up all these crustaceans. And so when they get off, they can come by and I'll serve them. And they'll pay me a little bit for what they're eating. Well, the rich people started smelling these crustaceans being cooked, watching all these workers gather around at the end of the day buying these crustaceans to eat. Sure, they had a little bit of slaw or this or that to go with it, not much more, but they did have butter and garlic and stuff like that to go with it, even lemons. And took a few people from the rich class to try some of these crustaceans, and they liked it. And they kind of watched these people, the way they cooked and prepared it. And they went back to some of the bigger restaurants and said, if you do this with this type of crustacean, do it like this, people would buy it and you can charge a lots of money for it. So sure the only one doing it. And it took off. And now it's been so over harvested, so inundated with all these rich people wanting this. And there's been chain of restaurants that open up serving these crustaceans, even one of them taking on the name of this crustacean. What am I talking about? Lobster. Lobsters at one time was such an abundance in the water, just right around the piers and the shores, just offshore and stuff like that. The smaller ones closer to the dock, the larger ones offshore. Put a piece of chicken or something else in there, and the lobster would be like the king crabs in Alaska. They would just crawl in to eat. Then you just pull those um, baskets up out of the water, and you'd have these lobsters you could sell to these big chain restaurants for high-end dollars. And it did take long for people to have restaurants and stuff like that. But see what happened to the lobsters. Now they're farm grown, different places, and you're lucky if you can find one that's much bigger than a man's hand. How can you tell? When a man picks up a lobster, holds it to you, don't look at the claw, look at the body, and you see it'll fit in a man's head. All you're going to eat is tail and claws anyway. But most of them are about the size of a man's hands. And they're trying to get lobsters back in the world. Lobsters have to be a certain size, certain age, and it can't be a female. They're uh, mating seasons and all like this. so many regulations. That's the reason why lobster is still expensive. But there was a number, and these numbers came true with lobsters. There's a number for wild animals throughout the world. We see the white rhino, the elephant, the Bengal tiger, the white tiger, lion, leopard, all these other animals about to go extinct. Why? Because there's a number. There is a number for everything. It's like the ivory trade. There was so much ivory that people wanted to own it all. And after a while, they got ivory from every place, from not just the elephant, but from the whale and from the walrus and different things like that. They got ivory, bones from them. And look at what's happened. All these things taken off. There was a number. And these things taken off almost led to the extinction of all these animals. There is a number, people. There is a number for what the governments can do for the poorest of people. Not for the middle class, not for the upper class, not for the ones barely getting by, but for the lowest class. Whatever they're doing, they're going to have to think about the poorest of the poor, what they can do for them. I know we got these stimulus checks coming out, and at first it come out anybody making less than $125,000. So if you made $100,000, you could get a stimulus check. They didn't need it. I'm not sure what the number was they finally figured out. But the next stimulus check, they said, okay, anybody making 80,000 or less. And now they're looking to bring out another one, anybody making 50,000 or less. And no matter how much fish you throw at a person, they need to go back to fishing. They need to take care of themselves. But right now, the government, instead of throwing money, needs to create jobs that pays a decent wage for people so they can make their own way of life. Give an example. I know that it won't never take off, but unemployment. Those people on unemployment are supposed to go out and be actively searching for a job. And if you think they're going to do that every day, you know they're not. But if you take one day a week and bring them in to a work center, they had this set up where they go in, they can actively search for a job through a computer or get referrals from workers there, caseworkers and all like that there, to go apply for a job application. That would be great. But what happens to the other 4 days? Our infrastructure is about to collapse. We need workers for there. Workers to do low-level things that need to get done. Cutting grass, picking up trash, sweeping, repairing our roads, taking care of our bridges, painting them, and here and there. They could do this. They could do just manual jobs. And these jobs should be in part based upon their unemployment. If they don't do these jobs, they don't get their unemployment. It does several things. It helps them find a job, but it also keeps them active. So when they do get a job and they go into it, they don't go in worn out because the first day is more work than what they've done in 6 months. It's like a football player They don't just bring him back and start the season up within a week or so. No, he has to come back and get himself ready in order to go out and play. The same thing for the workers. There's no difference. They might not like what they're doing, but if they're required to do it and put in 32 hours a week to do these jobs, then things will get done around our country and people will feel better. You're not throwing fish at them then. You're making them work for the fish. Makes them feel better. They don't like hearing me say that. But why do I say all this? And I'm coming close to the end. Because there's a number. And this number has already met its peak for around the world. And this peak means something's got to change, in the world that we live in. Governments and dictatorships cannot go on the way they are. As America fought against slavery, there's still many, many more countries out there that encourage slavery amongst its people. Selling and giving of slavery of all different kinds. They encourage it. Why? Because the government makes money off of it. It can't go on. There's too many people. So what happens when there's too many poor people living on the streets? What happens when the government can't throw any more food to those poor people? What are the poor people going to do? The ones just above them realize and see what's happening and know in their heart they're going to wind up in the same place because the gap keeps rising. And as the gap keeps rising, people making $20,000 a year no longer can't make a living like they could just 10 years ago. People making $30,000 cannot make a living just like they could just 3 years ago. People making $40,000 barely can make a living today. And making this living today is going faster and faster. So what's happening? We're reaching our number, a peak of our number of people multiplying, population, government control, dictatorship, slavery, monetary system. All of this got to come up to an end. No matter what the economists are saying, that everything looks okay, everything looks okay. There's so many variables, so many questions that need to be answered. And the government cannot throw fish at the problem and think it's going to go away. It's not. If the government only had 10 fish to throw to just one person all at one time, and that was the sum of it all, the government would throw all those fishes at one time, knowing the person that got those fish can only live off of one fish a day. What happens to the other 9? They rot. They're no good. Not no more. You can't eat rotten, spoiled fish. Some places can, but you can't do it. The people's going to take things in their own hands. You can't give them what they need. They'll break the law, go out there and fish for themselves. They already know. You can't give them the money they need. Well, they know that this place needs some extra help. If they give them this and that, instead of money, food, substance, clothing, house, whatever, They'll do this and do that. That's another way. That's the way it was for the longest time. The bartering system. The dollar is just based upon that. All world currency is based upon the bartering system. When it all drops out, and it will, there's a number. And I'm talking about a number that's going to be happening within the next 50, 60 years. It's going to happen. And when it happens, know that those poorest of people, they're going to become the resistors because they're going to become the wealthiest people because they can barter and do things. Remember the small villages, small towns, small things? The smallest person that could do a little bit of everything made the most because he didn't have to be paid that much, but he could do all these other little jobs and everybody wanted him to do it. Like I'm a jack of all trades. Town could not exist without it. You might have a carpenter, you might have a blacksmith, but even a carpenter needs help, even the blacksmith needs help. The sheriff needs help, the mayor needs help, and the jack of all trades could do it all. They're going to wind up being the rich people again. And what's going to happen to the upper class with all that money and all that stuff? If you're sitting in a small mansion, just a small one, and you can't get servants to come in and take care of your place, and you don't know how to do it, what good is it going to do? If you don't know how to go out and barter for stuff and trade your work, not your service, but your work for stuff, how are you going to make a living? Even if you make a product and try to trade it off for something, you'll have to make that on your own. You won't have any help because you won't be able to pay your help because they won't accept the money because the money's going to be useless. Am I talking about a collapse of the economic society? No. I'm talking about a collapse of the world government taking place. And by that collapse of the world governments throughout the whole world, there will become one. We might know them as the one world order, but they won't be called that. They'll be called something else. And all these different religions now will say, we've been preaching about this for so long. We're not amazed to see this happening. Uh, I'm not a preacher. I'm a servant of God, but I'm not a preacher. I like to have new worship, but I'm not a preacher. I just like to give the truth. And the truth is, people, let's get real. This, we're about to reach our number of the top of a roller coaster. And where it goes from there, how it goes, depends not on the rich, but on the poor class. They are going to be the common denominator that's going to take over everything. Got guns, whatever. You're going to shoot all the poor people, it's just going to make you poor. You're going to take over the government, you can't do any better than what the government is. The poor will rule over the rich. And the number is coming up very, very fast. So let's get real, people. I've talked about a lot of things, going longer than what I normally do. But I think about it. I don't stop. I might lay down and rest, but I wake up thinking the same thing. And my time is not over with. And the government don't like what I'm saying. World government don't like what I'm saying. But regardless of what, I'm telling you, let's get real and see the truth and know that if you don't help the poor will help themselves. Bye bye. This is David saying bye bye. from This Get Real.